to follow in her lead, especially those in education and those who are coaching and those who are trying to help others reach new heights. She has the Tree of Knowledge Academy. It's a learning academy, and really doing incredible work, helping train teachers. And she, as I said before, she is an administrator also, and does a lot of incredible work helping children like grow and proceed forward in reaching their potentials. She also works with the disabled, and does so much for the betterment of this world. And when I was asked to come speak by her event, I was just like, wow, like, what am I doing here? You can handle this. You have all the answers. And I was just like really touched by her depth of care, by her depth of like passion in, doing everything that she can to make the world a better place, especially for our children. And now more than ever, with what's going on in the world this past year, as we're integrating the children more back into school, we have to deal with them on a whole new level, like with more compassion, with more collaborative and joint ventures of including them in the process of helping them become their best self. So without further ado, I would like to bring Nicki on board and help her have a spotlight here to influence us influencers.
First of all, thank you, Miriam. It's always lovely to speak, but only for you would I speak this late at night. I always tell my family that after 8 o'clock, I don't even know what comes out of my mouth. So with Hashem's help, he'll help me say the right thoughts. But, we start our morning very early, and, this is usually wind down time, but I feel like this is so important. First of all, I have not really spoken ever about parenting. When my children were little, I thought about it. Then when my children became teenagers, I said never. And as they went into adulting, I felt like I knew even less. As a topic of just parenting, this is probably the first time that I've ever spoken on it. I feel like now that I'm a grandmother of Baruch Hashem, let me just think about this. It's 4, 5, 6, 6 grandchildren. And my daughter just had a granddaughter who she named Miriam. I feel like
Mazel tov, we can celebrate together, Baruch Hashem.
I had a client in my office the other day, and she said, well, now that you're a grandmother, I felt like I could come see you. I was like, oh, good. We still have something to offer this world. Because even when I hear that word, and you're a new grandmother, Miriam, I still think to myself, and by the way, isn't that funny? We've renewed our relationship, and my granddaughter born after this whole thing is Miriam.
Amazing.
Amazing, right? So, wow. You want to be able to offer things, and I don't even view myself as a grandmother still. And I'm sure that you're a first grandmother. It takes a really long time. And even when they're calling your name, you're like, who are they talking about? They must be talking about my grandmother, So it takes a while to adjust to it. But grandchildren are the biggest bracha in the world. Every child, you lose a piece of your brain, and every grandchild, you bring a piece back. And you need a lot of grandchildren to bring back those pieces. So it's not like, one-on-one. It's not one-to-one, okay? You need a lot of them to bring back the pieces. Raising children is incredibly, incredibly challenging, incredibly rewarding, but also incredibly challenging. And I think what we just went through with this pandemic and the anti-Semitism that's in the world right now, and the situation with Israel, I can't think of a time in my life that has been this complicated. So, it's kind of like everything you said before COVID is like thrown out the window, and now we have new eyes, and we look at things different. But one thing that stands in my mind, and I was thinking about this, if somebody asks me what's the number one thing as a parent that one needs to do, I always used to joke around, and it wasn't a joke. It was real. I was like, pray, pray, pray. How many kids do you have? I have 3 kids. So I say, pray, pray, pray. But if you have 10 kids, say it 10 times. You know what I'm saying? But the bottom line is, now having gone through this incredibly interesting year, I just can't stress it enough. We have no control in our life. We're living in a time that has shown us that we have, if you thought you had control before COVID, you realize you have absolutely no control. So as women, the most important thing that we can do is let go, let God. And that's a big, big piece for ourselves that we always have to keep in mind, is improving our own spirituality and our own connection to Hashem. Because the number one job of a parent, the number one job, the number one job is trying to transmit what was given to us at Sinai to the next generation, right? That's really what our job is. I mean, I can tell you that there are parents that have incredibly successful children who make a lot of money, and they'll come into my office crying their eyes off because the kids aren't spiritual, right? We as Jewish women understand that, yes, we want our kids to make parnasa, and we want them to have a successful career, and we want them to have all that. But the most important thing, the number one thing, is knowing that we are leaving the world a better place, and that our children are change agents in that experience, right? So in order to do that, we have to constantly be improving our spirituality, and that's not easy.
I always say, you have to model for them,
right,
what you pray for them.
Exactly.
So
All right. Exactly. And I'll tell you a funny thing about that. When you say that, there are so many parents that tell me, I think the most complicated question that I get from parents is when to say and when not to say. When do we every normal parent, every healthy parent knows how to praise their child. We don't have to tell them praise your child, right? But the more complicated thing is how we deal with them when they're not doing praiseworthy behavior. Okay, it's easy when they come home and say, "Ma, I got 100 on the test," and you go, "Woohoo!" You don't have to train parents to do that. They get that. But what happens when they get that 40?
Yeah, so we really have to love them when they're most unlovable.
Exactly, when they're most unlovable. And that's the work that has to be done. And that can only be done when you have a spiritual connection to God, because you're realizing you're just a transmitter. You're just somebody who's bringing that godly spiritual world to them. And so you look at things in a completely different way. That doesn't mean that you don't get frustrated. And one of the things that I wanted to say at the beginning is I did not send this to my children until about 5 minutes before. So I could say, because I'm crazy and I'm doing 1,000 things, but there was a piece of me that also said, I'm not sure I want them on the Zoom. They will not be able to agree or deny anything I'm saying, But listen, we all have hard days. We all have frustrating moments, right? We all have times where we say, oh, did I model the best behavior? In today's generation, our kids are raising us. And it's not just in the computer realm, which they know so much more about, right?
Yeah.
Everything has a physical and spiritual component to it, right? So just like they know so much more about computers, or no matter how computer savvy we think we are, they're 5 times savvier and they're 5 times quicker. But they're also raising us spiritually too. There's a new language going on today, and there's things that can't be said that may have been able to be said 25 years ago. So we have to, it's an interesting time. Even the words are not the same.
Definitely. I've been a big proponent of the language of love. Mm-hmm. And how important, to use our words very carefully, because just like, God created the world with his words, we can create them with our words. And just like God stopped speaking to create the peaceful Shabbos, we have to learn when to stop speaking to create peace, that the love and unity is way more important in the victory of getting them to be right or to do the right thing, that the bond and the love and the compassion in the tone of voice, in the groundedness while we're hearing them and listening to what they're going through, rather than spewing out the advice that their ears are blocked to hear. So yeah, for sure.
But I think in order to be in that mode that you're talking about, I think it's important that there's a lot of things that you have to work on to be in that mode. Now,
Yes.
some people are more naturally in that mode than others. I don't know. I haven't been to California since before the pandemic, but I used to come to California to visit my sister. And I thought I don't know, I always felt like California was kumbaya, you know, the Pacific Ocean. Everybody just seems like they're in that moment. I'm not sure if it's the drugs or what, but you just see a calmer environment. It's polar opposite than what you see when we're in the old Manhattan. I don't know what Manhattan looks like today either, but in the pre-pandemic Manhattan, right? And you say to yourself, okay, it's very easy if you're not working, if you're not, you only have one child. I remember parents would kid me, well, if the Dayenu song and the reversal. Well, if I only was doing this, Dayenu. If I was only doing this, Dayenu. So I can behave as a parent if I'm only doing this, if I'm only doing that, but it's not necessarily real life. So how do we take that feeling? Because if you're having a calm day, right, and you are spiritually connected, and your granddaughter takes a red marker and she slashes your blue couch, right? So when you're in a calm place, you say, oh, it's so fantastic that I spent $1,500 to have this carpet cleaner thing in my garage. So now whenever they do that, I can just spray it, yay, not make a big deal about it, right? But you have to be in a certain headspace to be able to say that, right? Your gut reaction, not everybody's gut reaction. Some people don't care about that kind of stuff, but I am a neat, clean, organized German blood. You can't, you can have the Holocaust, still can't take the German blood out of me, right? So my reaction is, the first thing I'm thinking about is how I'm going to clean that, right? So to get into that mode where you can have language of love, where you can have compassion, your mind has to have the endorphins in order to be able to be there. And those endorphins can be done by exercising, connecting with Hashem, listening to a class, davening in the morning. Then your whole day is more possibilities for those types of behaviors to be solution-based rather than nasty-based. That's a term that I came up with, right? We want to be solutions-based. We don't want to be nasty-based. And we don't necessarily even need to share the solutions with our children. They have to be in our head, not necessarily in our mouth, because they may not want to listen to those solutions. But in our head, there's a lot of things that we can be doing to, right? Like, for example, my 3-year-old daughter who took that marker all over the blue couch, she's not going to be cleaning that thing that I bought in the garage that calms me down. She's not able to do that. She's 3 years old, right? But in my head, that's what I was thinking to myself. Ooh, well, I've got this cleaning machine. It's going to be really fun tomorrow to put that cleaning machine on and see if it'll get rid of that red carpet, so that I could be like, okay, sweetie, let's take that marker away. Let's put it up high and let's read a book and go to bed. But so I have to be solutions-based. That doesn't mean that I have to share that solution with the child, because why would a 3-year-old child care that I have a cleaning machine in my garage? They're not going to use it. And it seems so simple for a 3-year-old, but that same exact solution brain is what you need even when your children are adults.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. And it just has to be in your mind. Okay, like, what could I do to calm the situation down without my mouth? And I think it's one of the biggest struggles for we as women, because we were given more than one language of love. We were given many languages. And as my grandmother, who I always quote, when parents come into my office and they have this tremendous guilt because they've yelled at their child, okay, they've thrown that fit, okay, we've all been there, we've all done it. We can give 1,000 reasons. We were tired, we were hungry, we were angry. My grandmother always used to say to me, we were given one tool of throwing a fit. And it is part of our toolkit. And there are times we need to use that. But if we use it often, it's worthless. So for example, if a kid is running in the street and you need to go running after them, right? And you need to be screaming to the person who doesn't realize that they're riding over your child. You have to throw a fit, right? There are definitely times that we Jewish women have to use and tap into hysteria. That's why we were given it. But if we use it often, then our kids tune it out.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the examples I give parents, and it's so like unreal sometimes, and you may have seen it, where someone's crossing the street and they finally get to the child because the child ran across without them, and then they start even like screaming at them, potching them with such anger. And like, where did that all come from the adrenaline of the fear of what could have happened?
100%.
And then, but imagine that same situation and running and saying, hold my heart, don't you see how I was so scared, you know how much I love you, and use that hysteria in a positive way and get the message across. I don't want to lose you ever, please don't ever. And like channel that energy of fear and anxiety into something so positive and loving and bonding. And that's like what we have to do almost every day, because every day in every moment in every scenario with what we're going through with them, it's like it could feel that life or death kind of situation.
Well, I think it can, but you also have to learn to differentiate between real and not real. I tell this to all of my clients. There is real anxiety, okay? Like COVID was real, okay? There was a pandemic. Maybe all the hysteria was a bit overrated, but it was real. It was real in our community. We lost people to it. It wasn't one of these fake things, right? So that's real. But then there are things that are truly not real. And we have to be able to differentiate real from not real. An example that I tell parents about not real is, a first grader getting a bad grade. It's not what you get hysterical about, okay? It's not the end of this child's world. I had a parent in my office yesterday with the two-year-old, 2 months male, okay? And in Miami, we have this issue where there's a lot of languages going on. So this was, I don't want to give details, but we have multiple language going on. You could be speaking French and Hebrew and Spanish, and the kid is exposed to a lot of languages. I would say most of the children here are delayed in language. Now, eventually they're ahead in language, but at the 2-year-old level, you see tremendous delays. So she, obviously goes to a speech therapist, and the speech therapist says, this child is delayed. And somehow it went from there to autism. And I'm not saying yes, no, whatever. I'm just saying this woman was completely hysterical about a 2-year-old 1-month child who wasn't at the grade level or developmentally where they needed to be with language. And I took her to my yeshiva, which we have for high functioning autistic boys, ADHD boys, boys with learning disabilities. And I showed her all the boys, and she was like, wow, these guys look so normal. They look so much fun. They're having a great time. I said, yeah, they were all language delayed. Every single one of them at 2 years old was not speaking, including my son, who's giving the smicha shir. Wow. So language delay does not necessarily indicate a future thing. You need to calm down about the future. We can absolutely get this kid help right now. There's amazing speech therapists, BCBAs that will work with verbal language, and we will get there. But right now, you cannot be thinking about what is my child going to be like when he's 22. That's not real, because it's all you can deal with is right now. So we have to differentiate between real and not real, and it's really important. When there's a real danger, we have to show our kids that there's a real danger, and we just went through this, right? What did a 3-year-old want to wear a mask on an airplane? Okay, no 3-year-old wanted, right? But those are the new rules. Those are the danger in theory that we have to, expose them to. So that's real, right? But there are some parents prior to COVID that were driving 3-year-olds crazy about touching things, and maybe they're going to come down with the flu. So okay, they're going to come down with the flu and they're going to be okay. So we have to be able to differentiate between real and not real.
Absolutely a critical point, because our imagination can run wild on some little seed and it can't stop. And the mind keeps ruminating and obsessing. And then that causes the emotional and very anxious like feelings in our physical body. And then that actually comes out in a very raw way when we're dealing with them, whether it's we raise our voice because of that anxious feeling, or worse, God forbid. So it's a real critical, to look at the holistic and long-term factors that may not play its part then and there as you think it may, be so critical.
But I always give the analogy of this when it comes to parenting. There are two pathways that we have in the Torah. And these are really the two interesting spiritual pathways. There is the pathway of the Torah, which is rule-based, right? The Torah has a lot of rules. You have to keep Shabbat, right? If you honor your parents, you will live a long life. That's in the Torah. That's it. That's the rules. That's what you got to do, right? And it has consequences. If you do not, respect the land of Israel, by doing certain things, you will be thrown out of the land of Israel. It's got a boundary list of things that one needs to do in order to live a quality and successful life, right? So that's the rules-based Torah. But there is this other path that exists. It's like two simultaneous train tracks, okay? And that other train track is best explained by the story of Yonah. So we read the story of Yonah on Yom Kippur, and Yonah was told to go to a certain city and tell them to do tshuva. And Yonah decided, I'm not doing it, because if they do tshuva, it's not going to look good for the Jewish people, right? How many times we tell the Jewish people to do tshuva and they don't do it? So It's not really a good idea. So God tells him what to do, but he thinks he's better than God. So he says, I'm not doing it. Okay. So he goes onto a boat opposite of the way of where he was supposed to go. Right. And everybody knows about the storm. They throw him overboard. In the end, he gets saved. He does tshuva, and he ends up going to that city. But when he goes to that city to tell them to do tshuva, the people do it right away, because the 70 elders of that city were on that boat and saw that he got thrown off. And they realized, oh my God, if he got saved, he must know from God, and we've got to keep this, right? So it doesn't make any sense. He's going the opposite way to Tarshish, ends up on the boat with the elders of Tarshish, right? And so we have this other path of God who runs the world, God who wants to have a relationship with us, God who doesn't want us to suffer the consequences of every single behavior. Generations that came before us of schusim that we don't even begin to know, right? So there's always this nudge of a path that somehow happens, right? We meet people that we need to meet at the right time. We say something like, oh, I need something to help me. And then all of a sudden that person walks in, right? We have those experiences. So we have these two paths that we are constantly walking. And as parents, I feel we're constantly walking those two paths. The one path is, yes, you do have to have rules and boundaries, because your child has to be safe. And there are certain things that have to go on, and you can't deny them. You can't say, oh my goodness, I'm going to have no bedtime. My child's going to decide when he has to go to bed. Have a kid who goes to bed at 11 o'clock at night and can't function in school the next day. That's not boundaries. That's not smart parenting. Okay.
Right.
But then there's this other thing. You may get a child who just puts himself to bed. Rare, but it does happen. Right. So not everything is you doing anything. Right? We all have that situation where, oh my goodness, this kid just does it on his own, right? There isn't anything we've done. So we have those two pathways, and we have to go back and forth and understand that those are two pathways that our kids are going to take. Just like our journey is not as defined as, as rewards and consequences, their journey is not defined as rewards and consequences. And I can say that to you in the ethics board of behavioral therapy. They would, have to throw me out now for saying that. But bottom line is I straddle being a spiritual woman and also being a behavioral therapist. And I feel like the only way that I can meet those two very diverse in certain ways paths is by understanding that there's a God, there's this other spiritual path, and then there is a rules-based path. that's even in the Torah. Torah doesn't not have rules, right?
Right.
So we have to define rules with our children, but we also have to have this other path too, working behind the scenes, nudging them from a different way. You know, we have to have this other path.
Right. So it's very exciting to me when the more I get to know you, the more I see we're so alike. And, you know, because I've been trying to merge, in a sense, you know, God back into the therapy room and bringing more spirituality into the healing process, and definitely helping our youth get to a better place. And it's interesting. There's the work that's by Dr. Ross Green, and it's one of the amazing books, The Explosive Child. And he also wrote the book Lost at School. And they're amazing books. And he actually does talk about, you know, this concept of collaborative problem solving with the child, and how to differentiate between, let's say, something that is so critical that must be addressed, which he calls put in basket A. And then there's other things like that are not as critical, basket B and basket C. And over the years of training parents to do that, and educators, I have found enormous, like incredible to see the enormous impact when the child owns up to being partners with some of the problem solving of the issues that come at home. You know, would you like to share some of your stories and your experiences?
I had an aha moment of this today. We do a weekly roundtable with my teenagers here in the yeshiva, and we do different topics. So it happens to be that this week we're rounding up this incredibly interesting school year that we've had. And it's our second to last roundtable. And so we were talking a lot about the summer and summer plans. And since the majority of our students are from Lakewood, and we are going to be spending the summers in Lakewood, we talked about having once a week get-togethers, things that will sort of keep them going throughout the summer for those boys that are, when they're done with, camp and how to arrange it. And I asked 2 boys to come up with a list of like little trips, between $10 and $15, not expensive, of where they'd like to go, so that we can make like sort of a calendar before they go home of like, maybe 4 trips over the summer. So I guess they were researching miniature golf, and they couldn't find a place in Lakewood to do miniature golf. That's a fairly inexpensive. Somebody gave them the idea. It's usually fairly inexpensive, and that's something that they wanted to do. All of a sudden, during the roundtable, one boy said, "Why do you say that there's no miniature golf near Lakewood? There's one 25 minutes away." They're going back and forth on it. Great, they're going to figure out this miniature golf. There's one kid in my yeshiva who hardly participated this year. Okay, he has one job for the roundtable. He takes the roundtable after it's videoed and he sends it out on the YouTube part. Okay, he sent it out on the YouTube, and he sent me an email that he was listening to the roundtable, which I'm thrilled he was. And he came up with a list of places for miniature golf, plus that apparently they have a company that comes to your house and sets up the miniature golf within your own house, okay? I said to myself, that was such an aha moment for this kid. That was exactly what I've been looking for from him the entire year, come up with creative solutions. And all of a sudden, he was able to do that when it came to miniature golf.
They definitely thrive, and they love feeling needed, and they love being part of, the solutions and the creativity.
Now that's the fun part. The non-fun part of our day was we have come up with a training protocol, which we normally do in the beginning of the year, with how each boy's room, bed, jobs, chores has to look like. And everything's a picture. When you do the toilet has to look like this. The rim, everything is very detailed, okay? So we didn't really get a good job doing it this year because so many boys had different delayed starts depending on, we have boys from all over the world, and this boy came afterwards and this boy came in January, and it took time for everybody to feel comfortable to send their kid back to the United States and to send their kid back out of town. So we started the last 2 weeks, we've started the training as we prepare them to go home and as we're going to start it next year. And some of the boys did very well. And then of course, there's always a group of boys that don't. And we're very, very strict about it. They had to come out of class. We do the checking at 9 o'clock in the morning. Any boy whose room and bed is not the way it is has to come out and do it. And these 4 boys were like horrified. You're taking me out of class? Me, who finally decided to go to class? You're taking me out to make my bed? Like, they couldn't believe it. They were like so shocked. I mean, what kind of school would actually enforce, such a rule, But then they did it and they went back. They had them in the round table. And this was a hilarious round table because I asked them, why do you think we stress this whole training of cleaning your room? Like, why do you do it? And we went around to these teenagers and they were all like, I don't know. Why would you? Like, I don't know. And they go, well, what would be the benefits of keeping your room clean? And then they were like, oh, like a clean room is a clean mind. Oh, we can find our stuff. And all of a sudden they were coming up with ideas, but these were the same kids that were throwing a major fit this morning where they had to clean their beds, So sometimes you do have to be that enforcer. It's not all fun and games as a parent. There is training. You have to train your child. And there's
Which
so
hopefully,
much of it over time,
right.
there was all the way through.
Yeah, there was a study done where they had these children and they were in a building where they decided to make it look more modern and make like a very see-through, like almost glass wall. And they noticed over the time when this new up-to-date modern looking gate was put up, they weren't really getting like involved in playing and they weren't throwing the ball. And because this actual wall was somewhat near, traffic. So that because they didn't feel with their physical eyes, the borders, that they didn't then feel safe. And I remember reading this and the person who was writing about this, that they then, put back the old gate that was rinky dinky and not so modern and not up to par with like a modern look. And they went back to playing and going because the borders and clearly seeing the borders is what really helps children thrive. And no borders is very scary because no one's out there.
I can't tell. I say this over and over again. I think it's one of the challenges of our generation. I don't think, if I think back to my parents or to my parent generation, they had an issue with this. I think they understood very clearly there are borders, here's the rules. They were a much more rules-based society. Somehow over time, parents have bought into this thing that my child needs to be happy all the time. And happiness is defined by we give our child every single thing that they want. And actually, those are the most unhappy children. It's so unbelievable how many kids have come to my school, and when we are enforcing the rules, a few of them may throw a fit about it, but when we stop enforcing them, maybe because a teacher gets sick or something like that, they go like, you're gonna let us get away with this, right? Many times parents will hear, because we have a whole class dojo experience, so they can see everything that their kid is doing. And sometimes I'll get a call from a parent and they'll be like, my child must be so depressed. And I'm like, no, I just saw them, kicking the ball, having a great time. I'm like, why would you think they're depressed? Well, they got, a -1 because they showed up late, or they got a minus this. I'm like, they know how to deal with this. They're not having that. They're fine. They're absolutely fine. So I think that we don't understand the importance that how happy they are when they actually do something productive. And that's where you see the real happiness. I found over time that the teachers that make them the most productive are the teachers that these kids like. And the teachers that let them do absolutely nothing are the teachers that they actually don't like. It's mind-blowing to me, because they will come to me and they will say to me, oh, this teacher, she really let me get away with stuff. She didn't really teach me what I needed to know. She didn't. Oh, and that teacher who I thought was so mean, I hated her. she actually taught me so much. You'll see that over time, they appreciate that. And I'm not talking about meanness. I'm just talking about holding the boundary, holding accountability,
Right.
showing them that we have rules here and we have to follow those rules.
And that's most compassionate,
That's
when
the piece that's the piece that I'm trying to work with in today's generation. Compassion equals helping your child become a productive human being.
and hopefully one less jerk in the world.
Compassion. Because really, if you have compassion, and I think the best way to explain it, my original program was based with children that were sick in the hospitals. And I used to, when you first are exposed to children with chemo, you do not feel that chemo is compassionate, right? You see children lose their hair. You see children vomiting profusely. You see this amazing athletic child be reduced to a bag of bones, right? And I remember the first time I walked a child through a bone marrow transplant. It's brutal, right? And first they lose all their hair, and then they lose all their this, and then they have no weight. And then, at the last minute when you think, oh my God, you're going to come back the next day, they're not even going to be alive, right? They're ready for the bone marrow transplant. They cannot see anybody. They're in a tent, they're in a bubble. You can't be exposed to them. They can't be exposed to anybody. Right. And then they get this bone marrow transplant. And then when all of a sudden, this vegetable of a human being all of a sudden starts getting the right when it works, it's such a powerful, it's really so powerful to see. All of a sudden they're able to eat, and they're able to get stronger, and they're able to get out of their bed, and they're able to be exposed to people, and they're be able to walk, and their hair starts becoming fuzz, and they grow back. And you think to yourself, that's really compassion. I mean, that's hard work. That's doctors who strip them from nothing, right? And have to rebuild them. But that's sometimes the job of a parent and an educator. I mean, we hope never to have to go that crazy, but that is our job sometimes. Our job is to train them, to teach them in a compassionate way, in a calm way, and walk them through them being able to make decisions. And that's our job, so that we can take this flower and let it bloom. So compassion doesn't mean I let you do whatever you want. Compassion doesn't mean that when you call me and say, Mom, can you get me the iPhone? I don't even know what level we're on. I need the newest, most, version, get me every piece of technology that's just going to destroy my brain. Compassion is not giving in. So that's compassion. So it's not what you necessarily think is compassion.
And that's a very tall order sometimes for the parent to really implement that. And there's many factors. I mean, sometimes it's because they feel insecure in who they are. And so they feel very needy of their child's love. So they think that, oh, if I just buy them this, or if I say yes, then they'll love me more. And then like almost as if they're trying to buy their love. And then they're
what I tell a lot of parents, and it sounds really mean, Miriam, but I'm hoping that via this kind of mode, they'll listen to this. A lot of times I'll say to parents, please do yourself a favor and get your own therapist. And they look at me like, oh, I told them the worst thing in the world. But there's a wonderful coach friend of mine, and she's the one who taught me this, that sometimes a child needs a team of professionals, and sometimes parents need a team of professionals.
Sometimes.
It's not a bad thing. They always do. It's not a bad thing. When I'm telling them to go to therapy, it's not like you're punished, go to the principal's office. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I want to help you, but I have to help your child. And my whole focus has to be on your child. It can't be on your anxiety. It can't be on your own trauma. It can't be on your thing. You're doing yourself a favor to learn, expanding your toolbox. I tell the story, even how I met Miriam. So I think it's important because I haven't shared it really with anybody. But I was going through my BCBA boards, and I was out of my mind. I was older. I had taken psychology boards before and special education boards. But when I had to go through my BCBA boards, it was like, I thought I was going to literally lose my mind. And I went to go hear a speaker here in my neighborhood, and I used to listen to his podcast every single morning. And one day he had Miriam on the podcast. And I remember you were talking, and I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this is what I need at this time. I need to calm my brain down. I need to you talked a lot about calming your brain down. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, I'm a psychologist. I've been in the mental health realm for many, many years. And yet I needed that for myself. I needed somebody to talk to me what it looks like when you're davening and you're meditating. What does it look like? I needed that refresher. And I just can't stress it enough. You need a support group. You need people, by the way, of other parents that are in the same. I always tell parents that this is the team that they should put together a team for themselves. One is a spiritual mentor. One is a professional mentor. And you need groups of different people, different stages, different ages. When you're taking a baby, I'm now dealing with this because I'm back in the babies coming home from the hospital, right? Miriam, well, we haven't done this in a while, right? My youngest baby is 21 years old. Do you think I remember anything from when I took her home from the hospital? I can barely remember my name at the end of the day, right? And so I'll tell you a funny story. When my youngest had a baby in December, I was in the middle of COVID. And I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't think straight. I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. And I was staying in somebody's house who also had COVID, but they weren't as sick as me. And I crawled up the steps. Okay. So we're now 4 people who all have COVID. Okay. The woman is a mental health professional. The husband is a special education lawyer. I'm 1,000 things. My husband's 1,000 things. He's a clinical psychologist. And I'm literally crying. Why am I crying? Because I'm trying to think how, when my daughter comes home with the baby, that like I'm going to help her at 6 o'clock in the morning, because I'm normally an early riser and I can do normally the early morning shift. And all these people look at me like, are you crazy? First of all, you're a grandmother. And second of all, did you not remember that there's this thing called help? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what, therapy? Like, what are you talking about? And they were like, no. Here's a phone number of a 24-hour nurse, who's going to come and help you. And she can move in and live with you for a month. I'm like, there's an agency that does this.
Oh, please give me that number.
And there are, and they're fabulous. And I was so sick. I had this amazing woman from the islands, spiritual woman, came 2 days early before my daughter came home from the hospital, because honestly, I was sick. I was no longer contagious, but I really wasn't feeling that great. First, she took care of me. Then she took care of my daughter. Then she was with us, the whole family. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is even better than me getting up at 6 a.m. and taking the baby for a walk. Like, what was I thinking? You know what I'm saying? So you need people that have gone through this. If it hadn't been for the fact that this couple that I was living with had already had grandchildren, they already had the experience where they needed more help. That was like, it was a one phone call savior. So you at that age and stage, you need to understand people that are at that age and stage. When you're dealing with teenagers, great, you may have little kids and you may have friends that have little kids, but you better find some parents of teenagers, because it's a whole different world. When you're going through shidduchim with your child, you better speak to people that have gone through shidduchim, because it's a whole different world, right? So you got to find people throughout your life and throughout the trajectory of these children that help you and that mentor you for that specific stage and age.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, you're right?
Absolutely. It can make all the difference in the world. First of all, you don't feel so alone, because a lot of people feel like it's just them going through this challenge. Exactly. They think, what's wrong with me, that I can't cope, that this is so hard for me. And I just can remember back in many stages of my life, where I just felt like no one else is thinking this or feeling this or having a hard time with that. And then once I really started getting in the field, and I'm like, oh my gosh, almost everyone is going through it. And just everyone thinks that they're alone. And I'm like, exactly. I would tell them, like, I also felt the same way. Like, trust me, you're not the only one going through this.
I've had, I work in an office in Lakewood, and there's, thank God I have, over 250 firm women that work for me. And I know I'll tell these stories sometimes when we're doing training, like, there's nothing like a teenage girl in the morning, who's having her period. There's just nothing like it, and until you experience it, you don't know what it's like. Right. And then by the time you show up to work, you literally think like your whole life was worthless because you couldn't get your own daughter through an emotional trauma of hormones, right? And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, and I remember having staff that would come in, I'd be like, your daughter's 14. You're a good person. You're still a good person. Everything you did in life was right. Don't worry. You know how to dress.
This too will pass.
This too will pass. And everything she said to you this morning, she didn't mean it. She didn't mean it. And, but that's that stage, now I have the opposite stage. I have my own daughters having children, and it's totally different. It's like, please come, please, we love you. Don't leave, and you're the working grandmother, as we are, and you're trying to figure out, how do I balance? I'm still running a business, and now we have babies coming into, and I'm back in the baby stage, right?
I think we have to talk more often, actually, because
exactly. And your kid is like in a different hormonal stage. They're like, I got punctured, I'm gonna pass, and you're like, I'm sorry, but I love you, honey. You just came home from the hospital. I have to go do this Zoom right now. You know what I'm saying? But you know what I mean? Oh, you had a bad night? She was keeping you up at 3 a.m? Ooh, oh, okay. So it's a totally different stage, right? And you have to talk to other women your age, to help you through that stage.
Right.
The sisterhood.
I wanted to say something that you said about like really the parents getting the help they need, God willing, so they can be more compassionate and in even their strictness.
Right.
But like I can say, like, many parents will bring their children to therapy and say, my watch is broken, as if, can you fix it? And it's really not the therapist's job to fix the child. It's really mainly the work of the parents to learn how to tolerate and be at peace with the process of what the children are going through. Like, for instance, their brain is like this small. Even us adults' brains that are like fully developed, hopefully, can't seem to make it, so perfectly in life with self-mastery and self-regulation. Like, how can we help them realize not to be so demanding of like this child that needs to be, self-regulated, which it doesn't even happen for adults.
One of the frustrating things I have in my school is parents constantly telling me about their age. So my child at the age of 15 should know this. My child at the age of 20, first of all, I don't even know where somebody needs to tell me where that list is. Do you know what I'm saying? Of what they're supposed to be doing at 15, because I don't even know what that is anymore. Like, we have those lists for like 1-year-olds and 6-month-olds and 2-year-olds. And even that today, I don't even know if that's 100%, but for sure for the adolescent population, we don't even have a list. So I'm not sure where you got what they should know. Okay. But the second thing is when they tell me like at 20 years old, he should be this. And I'm thinking to myself, I would love to be there with you, but the bottom line is he's 20 years old and he's not there. So, and he's not, and the same sentence will say he's socially immature. So why doesn't he act like a 20-year-old? They've already answered their question in their space, but I have to be careful because my thought process is because they're socially immature. They're not acting as a 20-year-old. That you just answered your own question. But it doesn't help me. It's not solutions based. So I think the biggest thing that and I have the same problem with school versus parents. You're a special education school, so you should have cured him. Well, we don't cure. And then the teachers in a special education school saying those parents should have da. Well, they didn't. So we have a lot of shoulds, and that's not going to get anywhere for anybody.
Right. I mean, if you look in the Bible, some of the holiest tzaddikim had interesting children, and some of the Rashaim had some of the most interesting tzaddikim. So,
That goes to that goes back to that path. That's why I keep telling
right.
people. There are some rules that we have to develop that we're given in the Torah.
Right.
But there is this other pathway. We have no concept of where this neshama is coming from.
Exactly.
We have no concept of where our neshama is coming from and what tikkuns we need in order to be in this world. We don't understand. We can't understand that. All we can know is that our journey in life, and that's incredibly difficult to say and incredibly difficult to internalize. I am very, very careful when I say it, but it's really, unfortunately, the only really true answer. These neshamas come to us. That is a fact. They come with every way to give us an opportunity to improve ourselves. Okay.
Yeah, I say, like, a pitcher of glass, and if it
Right.
has cracks in it, you won't know until you
Right.
put the milk in.
Right.
So until you have children,
That's
like,
it.
you get to figure out where your cracks are, and you get
Right.
to have an opportunity to look at yourself more deeply of where
Right.
you need to reach new heights in your patience and your tolerance and your compassion and your forgiveness and more.
Yeah. And it's literally till the day you die. So it's a constant pathway for us to be asking ourselves, what is our journey? What does Hashem want us to learn from this? How can we daven? I mean, I think one of the biggest brachos and the things that I really learned from listening to Gedalia Fenster is when we say that bracha in Shemona Esrei of Das, I mean, that's a whole nother level. We are asking for that right thing to go into our brain at the right time for us to be able to deal. And I ask all the time, if I'm dealing with some complicated situations or complicated meetings, I'm straight out, Hashem, I need help with this. I need an idea. I need to, this is what I need to do. And then the general Das, how do I just work on my brain? I think that we can't work enough on ourselves, and it's not easy. We have to, it's very humbling, very humbling. We're gonna have days where we do the right thing, and we have days that we're not going to do the right thing. Our job is not guilt. That is not what God wants of us. It's to dust off our feet, dust our shoulder off, and say, okay, tomorrow we put 2 feet together and we try again. And
Beautiful.
We try and we try and we try.
I read somewhere a beautiful sentence, and I wanted to share it. Remember, children are like plants. If you give them enough sunshine and turn to the sun, they will more likely grow straight and tall. And if that's not enough, we turn the sun. We got to do all that we can, even move the sun for our children to make sure.
I love that statement because I'm here in sunshine, sunny Florida. And one of the things I do tell parents who send their kids to this school is that the sun is very helpful. And the more sun we have, I definitely, it helps mood regulation and gets them into a better place. So sometimes the actual real sun is an important thing for those of you that are listening up north, or really haven't spent time in nature sometimes also to get that sun. And sometimes we, like you said, we have to do it without, we have to turn the sun, we have to whatever. And that's asking God to go above nature. It exists in this world. That's why we have 8 days of Hanukkah. That's why we give the bris on the 8th day. We do have the ability to ask God to go out of the natural world for our children, right? But we have to remember that within the natural world too, there are times that we have to do things. So it's kind of like both. We have to do what we can and our own hishtadlus, and then there is this out of nature realm that God can help us with.
Why is it not working?
Amen. Wow.
So,
I mean, definitely visualizing them succeeding in areas that they are weak in, visualizing yourself interacting with them in ways that you need improving. I can't tell you enough how powerful doing that is. First of all, you are outwitting your brain, because your brain doesn't know the difference between past, present, and future. So if you're visualizing an interaction like you would want with your child, or you can call it recreate history, you didn't do it X, Y, and Z way, and you want to do it the other and more soft and loving and compassionate way, even within your, strictness, that you are creating new neural pathways by envisioning the you that you want to be and the you that they, eventually more and more could be. And I cannot tell you, there have been many psychiatrists and different people who are working with the worst, like most difficult cases that no one could help. And how did they succeed in helping these clients that they didn't even see in person? They would look at the picture, they would meditate and feel love toward them, they would see them heal and be better. And there was a case study done with rats. Interesting enough, they were given to these expert trainers and said, train these groups of rats. This group of rats are they are genius types of rats. And they gave another group of expert trainers and said, train these rats. These are below IQ, way below IQ rats. Actually, they were the same rats. The expert trainers did not know. The ones that kept thinking how genius they were had an effect that these rats had genius-like success in learning these routes. The ones that were supposedly below IQ, which they weren't, did below IQ level of succeeding in learning these routes. So how we think, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe would tell us, spend a half an hour really thinking about your children and the chinuch of your children. And, which I spend in my visualizing those qualities and of those character traits that I want my clients as well as my family members to more easily achieve. And I can't even tell you one experience that I had while one of my children were sleeping, and I was just like near their bed and meditating that time on, what I wanted for them to do in their processing of having hopefully learn from their mistake. And all of a sudden, soon after I finished, the person woke up almost crying, saying they had a dream and that they really need to do tshuva and they really realized what they did wrong. And I was like, oh my gosh, aha moment of seeing my thoughts, my meditation come into their thought and actually impregnate them with a vision and a dream, which then really helped them. And I've seen it again and again. And this is something I highly recommend.
Funny that you say that about the Rebbe. So in my office here in Florida, I have a picture of the Rebbe. So a lot of people come in and the first thing they say is, oh, are you Lubavitch? Because the joke that they say about South Florida is, are there any Jews left in 770? It's an extremely oriented city. But I joke around with them. I say, no, I put the picture of the Rebbe up because I need a visual clue for think good and it will be good, right? That's his famous line in Yiddish. Yes. And that's what I need to do because I sit in an office where I see tremendously, quote unquote, sad parents, parents that are frustrated, parents that have, are finally coming to terms with where their kid is. And I have to visualize sometimes for them that this kid is going to be good and that we are going to get them out of this situation. But I really love that thing that you just mentioned about visualizing your kid being successful, because I feel that that will help so much for them in the process when, let's do a realistic view of that. In other words, you get a call sometimes by me and I say, oh my goodness, this kid did something in the school and I need you to get into a meeting with them so we can show them that we're on the same page. You can get through that meeting where you want to either kill your kid or you want to kill the teacher or both. You know what I'm saying? You can get through that meeting if you are thinking and visualizing your child underneath the chuppah or your child, whatever your vision is for that child. Then you could be like, oh, okay, we're disappointed in what happened, but we're going to think of solutions. But you can't get there if you can't get that vision. And by the way, I think it's really, really important. Parents and teachers have to be at the point where they can get that visualization. If you are at the point where you cannot visualize, for whatever reason, that kid has done something so outrageous, egregious, it's happened here, okay? Then don't have that meeting during that time. Give
Absolutely.
it time. You have to have the ability to visualize your child in that successful pathway. So whatever it takes for you to get that visualization back. And that's why, again, I say how important it is to have a support team, a therapist, somebody that's working with you, directly with you, that knows what it's going to take for you to get into that vision. Because the person working with your child doesn't have that time. They don't have that ability. They're trying to get the child to where they need to be. They can't get you to where you need to be. You're not their client. So you got to get that. Either you do it yourself, you learn some self-help techniques, or you get some help to do it. Then you can be much more collaborative with the staff working. You know, we all make mistakes. My daughter had a baby over Shabbos, and a really funny story happened. Her doula was pregnant and went into labor in the middle of labor with her. And it's really funny when you hear it, you laugh and go, oh my gosh, but it actually really wasn't funny. So it wasn't funny. In reality, it's funny when you hear about it, you know?
Yes.
And,
oh my gosh.
And, you know, it created a lot of chaos and whatever. We got through it and it was all good. But the next morning, a parent called me, and something that was so whatever, like we were crazy because I had not slept for 2 days. Now, I should not have taken the phone call. Right? I was like out of my mind. I mean, imagine you're in labor with your daughter. It's COVID. The only person
I became an instant doula, by the way, because the COVID laws changed, and I was actually at the birthing room.
So people asked me 1,000 times. Here's another example where friends said to me, you should become a doula just so that you can be in the room with your child. And I thought, oh, we have this amazing doula here in Florida. I love to be with my child, but like, I'll use a real doula. Do you know what I'm saying? I was with every other grandchild till this one. We hired this amazing woman, and she is amazing, but she went into labor 2 weeks early. And it's hilarious, right? Meanwhile, my daughter was alone in the hospital. I can't go into the hospital. My son-in-law, who again would have normally been there, but had gotten himself into the mode that he wasn't going to be doing this because we had hired a doula, you know, had to step in, and we're all walking through this. So you know, that's life. You got to make changes and things happen, right? So the next morning, a parent calls me. I literally thought you know, I wasn't Mrs. Sweet, compassionate principal. You know, this kid had been annoying, had done some stuff that I was angry about, and I was just like, boom. Thank God the parent and I have worked together for a long time, and she realized that, oh, I had a grandchild. Oh, I had been up all night. Oh, and like we were able to work through it. But there are moments that you have that things happen that you're not going to, you know, again, you really have to make sure that you're it's on you to be in the right brain space. It's on you. You dive in for it, you pray for it, but it's on you. And it's not easy, which means you got to take breaks. Compassionate parenting means make sure you take the time for yourself, to whatever it takes to get strong.
Right. I always say self-care is their care.
Exactly. Self-care is their care. And it's also compassionate parenting, because if you are in the right brain space, then there's a higher likelihood that your child will be in the right brain space.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Anyways.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miriam. It's always a pleasure. Oh, I see my sister Adina on here.
Yeah, maybe she would like to say a few words here. I'm
no,
so happy we have
my mother would say that Nechama was the co-parent. So I hope I turned out okay.
Amazing. Wow. I'm so happy that we're all here together. There's a lot more to speak about. And, but we've covered a lot here, and I hope and pray, maybe you can share a few words. What was your experience hearing this? And you always have so many beautiful things to say.
Yeah, Dini, talk a little bit.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think also it's very important to it's kind of just echoing on top of what Nechama said. And I'll say this because in all confessional, this is what we are for each other, is to have your person. We're lucky to have each other. We do come from 7 children, but I would say that we talk a lot. We kind of run our game past people. I heard a great interview with somebody recently who was actually in a sports world, and he said, like, how are you so good at what you do? How do you always make the shot? How do you always win the game? And he said, because I run my game by someone else first. And I think that really describes a lot of times Nechama and I, in parenting. We pre-game, we post-game, we breathe through our game. We always used to have a joke that Nechama's going to go through something 2 years before because she's 2 years older than me. Sometimes I went through something with a married child, or even a child, and I was like, oh, okay, just want to let you know I got this one first. So it's going to happen. Just want to pregame you, and really to have someone. I think that goes in line with self-care. That goes in line with, the idea of parenting. Nechama and I come from a family where our parents I don't know if she told this because I was kind of in and out of this, but our parents used to, they would say, okay, bye, we're leaving, we're going out for the night. Like, we were old enough to watch ourselves. And if we weren't, don't report. I have no idea. But the bottom line is my parents would go out and they would say, where are you going? And they would say, we're going to Avi Shulman's parenting class. I think back in the day, I don't know if he's still around, but he used to be a big parenting guru. So we had examples of parents who wanted to learn how to be better parents and to constantly, kind of check in. Now, whether it was that or was a therapist.
I have to tell you something funny, Tini, because I remember when they used to go out, we'd be like, okay, so are they going to come back and be nicer to us or meaner to us?
Right. It was a little bit, I don't know.
Are we going to get what we want, or we can not get what we want?
And we would probably, if I'm being real honest, probably use it against them. Like the next day, if something didn't go our way, we would be like, so was that what you learned in the parenting class? But today parents are still going to those type of things, and I would say a little bit, unfortunately, they're working with real top people in the field from a lot of negative and difficult perspective. But I don't think it has to always come to that. I think that if you have a person, whether it's your sister or your sibling, your best friend, for me lately also, it's a little Miriam Yerushalmi, because even when we don't get to speak, I'm like, hi, just in case you don't know, I'm checking in. I don't know what that means. I think that's important. You have to, there's a overwhelming sense of privacy in our greater community, which is great. And there's that. And then the dichotomy is that you'll read about the nuances and you'll read about the, what we're now talking about, what people didn't talk about 12, 20 years ago. However, there's one thing to read about something in a magazine on a Shabbos, and there's another thing to have your person to be able to talk to and really say, hey, I'm going through this with my child. And obviously for your child's sake, you should keep it confidential, but there's no shame. And I would encourage people to reach out, to have a person, maybe a couple people for different reasons. If you have I don't have boys, I would have never, I didn't have boys. I only had 4 girls. Right. So if a mother of a boy called me, sometimes I would say, maybe I'm, not the best person because I'm not sending a kid off to yeshiva or whatever the case is. So it's really just, it's run your game by people.
And I can't stress that enough, even in school. I know so many, we really have to stop being so reactive.
Yes, and demystify and the shame and all the negative feelings that, if I'm calling for help, then I'm not going to get a shidduch for my child, or if I'm calling for help, that means I'm a failure. Or
it could be as simple as a parent calling you before they react to their child.
Right.
I always say, like, 90% of the phone calls I got, it's after they reacted.
Yes.
They don't pre-game. They don't say, hey, here is what I heard. I am frustrated. Before I talk to my child, before I let me run this by you. Before I call the school, before I do this, what would be the best way? How would be the best way to say it? And I want to end with one thing. Kindness, I keep telling this to parents today. My father, one of the best things he modeled for me, I think, was Dee Dee, I don't know if you remember this, but he used to walk into all the parent-teacher conferences with candy. Okay. He went to every parent-teacher conference with chocolate. And we used to laugh because we say, okay, and don't give chocolate to that mean teacher. Don't give chocolate. We were giving him lists of which mean teacher he shouldn't give the chocolate to.
Which would have given the chocolate to nobody.
Right, exactly. And my father would say, no, that's exactly the teacher I'm going to give it to. And I'm going to go to every single teacher and I'm going to say, thank you for working with my child. And here's a piece of chocolate. And we were like, huh? Why are you doing that? Nobody else does that. Kindness goes a long way. You know, me and Dee Dee right now are not even eating sugar. We still would appreciate a piece of candy, even if we wouldn't eat it, even if we would give it away to somebody else that came into our office. It shows that you actually care about about that person. The people that are taking care of your children, Rebbes, teachers, therapists, they are working hard. And a kind word and a nice small gift goes a long way for them to be able to visualize your success of your child's health. And that's the truth.
I will also say that my father used to walk into the classroom when he would go here and he would say, isn't my kid great? And he knew that's not what the teacher felt. He wanted to put out there that whatever we're going to say here, which may need to be said, I still think my kid is great. I had a friend who once taught me something really beautiful. She had a very difficult situation with her child. The child had special needs, really had a tough time in classroom settings. She used to go, obviously, to the parent-teacher conference, and it would just be one horrible, difficult report after another. And her husband's Rosh Hashiva told her this, and she started to do it. She told it to me. She would go to the parent-teacher conference, and she would go, look, you have the schus of having my child in your class. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how you got that schus. But now that you have it, let's figure out what we're going to do about it.
Beautiful.
And really showing the teacher, like, I get that my kid's hard. I get it. What are we doing about it?
Beautiful.
I still think the candy, I like this schus idea.
I like both. I actually like both.
But it's true. And yeah, well, it's getting late for me.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining. We will be back together again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This is just the beginning. And thank you so much for your brilliance, for your care, for your heart, for you being you.
Thank you, Miriam.
And bless you in extending Orach Yamim of all the kaichas to continue your holy work in helping these children, these families. Wow, my hat off to you.
Baruch, Baruch. You know, the one who blesses should get blessed. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Good
Night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. And,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
My pleasure. And I miss Lakewood, and God willing, we'll have another opportunity to be together again.
Right. And also one quick thing, that if anybody has any questions and they want to email me, my email is nsalfer, NSALFER, @learningtreemiami.com. And that's pretty much the best way to get a hold of me. Thank you. Talk to you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. So we're going to work together. We're going to do whatever we can, consult, discuss.
I didn't get that email. Can you repeat that, please?
Hold on. I think her sister's on. Maybe she's not, but you could text me privately if you want, and I can give you her email. Let me see if I have it handy here. No, I don't. Okay, so I will send it to you. Do you have my email? Reaching New Heights.
Yes.
MY@gmail.com.
I have your WhatsApp, so I'll contact you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, Chana Miriam, for putting this Zoom together, hosting it, and the beautiful flyer. And if you want to also share some words, we'd love to hear from you too. I know you're way out there late, and I know there's children all around you maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, I get to see.
Yeah, it was so good to hear beautiful advice, and it's so true. It's so true that you have to hold back before you react. I see that, especially with my children, especially my oldest, I have to really think before I speak and retract before I act. And otherwise, it's gonna be a consequence. But I have to I always keep it back on my mind that whatever I say or do is gonna have an impact on my kids and generations to come.
Yes,
So
I mean, refrain and you gain.
exactly. So I always mindful that it's better to speak calmly and talk to them than scream, because we're not gonna get anywhere. And it's not only gonna damage, their neshama, even if their own brain function is gonna, is gonna have some damage and putting extra stress on them, and it's just not worth it. It's not worth like the consequence. So and that's, pretty much it. I have my little one here. I want everybody here.
Hi.
There's my little one here. And so it's just it's not easy. Parenting sometimes is not easy, but we have Hashem. And we have everything, all tools available to be able to follow the guidelines and instructions to be able to do that. And we have our sages, and we have many beautiful women and wonderful people just like you and Nicki to be able to go to, and a moment of desperation or whatever it is that we need to work out through, and so that we can have children and our people that are wonderful human beings that want to bring Hashem's light into this world. We can transfer Hashem's love to them, and they can transfer that love to the children's and children's children from generations.
Amen. And by the way, I would like to give you a public shout out of thanks, because thanks to you, you organize my classes. Not only do you put my classes on YouTube after the Zooms, but you've organized my website, yournewheights.com, where you can see like parenting classes, at least some of them, right? We're working on getting more up there. So if you're interested in more parenting classes, and also my Kindness in Marriage book actually also has a parenting chapter, and everything that is written in my Kindness in Marriage book is applicable to how you deal with children.
Thanks.
So please look, for those of you who are interested in more information about that, yournewheights.com. And thank you, Hannah, for doing so much for our organization and for putting so much effort in getting this word out.
My pleasure, truly.
Thank you, my dear soul sisters, for joining, and we will continue. Bezrat Hashem, tomorrow we have a JLI course that we're doing for 5 more weeks, a vision for Mashiach, and that unfortunately is a little later in LA at 9 p.m. But we do record it. We do then post it up again. And upcoming events are a Sparks event on nutrition and healing. And that's coming up soon. And then there's another event, Tarat HaMishpacha in the Valley, also in person. So if you want to get more information of how to join our classes, you can private message me either by my WhatsApp or my email, and we will add you to either an email list or a WhatsApp list so that you get more information of upcoming events. And Baruch Hashem, we have had so many amazing speakers that I can't get enough, and I can't get enough of sharing my soul sisters to you all. Okay, so blessings, and we will continue. Bye-bye.